In this video we're going to show how you can repopulate the choices in a drop-down box on a dialog component. So you can see here we have a drop-down box called ddbox1 and the choices in the drop-down are alpha, beta, gamma. But when we press this button over here, we're going to do an AJAX callback to the server, compute new choices for this list, and then send a JavaScript response back to the browser to repopulate the drop-down. So when I click the button over there, we do a repopulate, and you can see now we have a new list over here. So let's go back now and look behind the scenes to see how this all works. So if we go back to controls here, you can see that we have a drop-down box, and the choices for this drop-down box are set to a variable called list2. So if we go to our server-side events and then on initialize, we see that e.rtc.list2 is set to comma to CRLF of alpha, beta, gamma. So that gives us the initial choices in the drop-down. Then when we click this repopulate button, we're making an AJAX callback and we're calling an XBasic function called newList to handle the AJAX callback. So then when we go to XBasic functions and we look at newList, you can see I've put a debug1 over here so we can trace into it. So let's go back now and click the button, and here we go. So we're inside newList right now, and this is the XBasic function that is handling our AJAX callback, and the XBasic function needs to compute some JavaScript that will be sent back to the browser in response to the AJAX callback. So if we step through, we can see that newList is just being set to an arbitrary list right now. I've just chosen all of the built-in colors in Alpha 5. Obviously in a real-world application, this is where you would have all your logic to compute the actual new list of choices for the drop-down. But you can see here I've got just my list of choices in a CRLF delimited list. Then I call a XBasic function called JSList2Array. That's JavaScript list2Array. So I'm turning that list into a JavaScript array syntax. So you can see square bracket and then all of the choices with single quotes around them. So now I have newList is just a variable. So now I need to actually create the JavaScript to send back to the client. So you can see here that this is our JavaScript code. So we've got data equals, and then I've got underbar data. So this is just a placeholder that I'm going to fill in this step over here. And then I've just said current data equals null, clear existing equals true. And then I'm calling a method of the dialog component called populate dropdown box. The dropdown box that I want to populate is ddbox1. The data that I'd like to use is from this JavaScript variable called data, and clear existing is going to be set to true. So now if I go here, let's just go and examine what JS looks like right now. As you can see, there's my placeholder. But then after I execute this stri_tran, the placeholder in the JavaScript has been replaced with the actual data. So now I have var data equals, and I've got my full array over there. And now I've computed all of the JavaScript that I want to send back to the client, and so now I just return this value by saying newList equals JS, and that's because newList is my function name. So I go ahead there and run it, and you can see now that we've repopulated this list. So this is showing how we can dynamically repopulate the choices in a drop-down box by making an AJAX callback to the server to compute a new set of choices and then sending the response back to the browser. Thank you very much for watching.